it is. It is a great pleasure to make your acquaintance this evening and to begin this project. We on this side are quite excited about it for all of you. It is with great anticipation that we are meeting at this point. And we look forward to the continual gathering of spirit with this group in order to walk you through the techniques and the experiences of letting go and allowing us to speak through you.
Thank you. We look forward to this.
Yes.
I'm glad you were here. Us too.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Oh, it is our pleasure to be here. We are quite excited for this. The medium here has not had an opportunity to work with other people in developing this gift.
Our pleasure. We're happy to do it. It'll be a learning experience for us all.
Yes, most definitely. We want to stress that the most important thing about working in the trance state is to allow yourself not to get uptight about it and just to be as calm and as passive as possible and as peaceful as possible, and not to try to force things, but to be available for us to tie into your energy, blend with your energy, and then allow us to talk through you. It is something that you should be aware of, is that is not a really natural state for human beings, because most human beings fight and hold on very strongly because they do not want to let go and give up control of their minds. So it is something that is to be looked at with kind of as a remarkable event, that a person can go against human nature and know that and open themselves up to allow another individual, although discarnate, to use their physical being to allow our thoughts to talk through them. So it is a skill that needs to be honed and needs to be practiced, and the more you do it, the more it becomes easier to do. Do any of you have any questions at this time?
Not really. I mean, you're right. I mean, you're absolutely right. It's very difficult to let go. It's a fight. There's fear of what it's going to feel like. Kind of like having a baby, I guess. But I'm excited to try even more now.
The things that I have been saying to my people, and again, I didn't introduce myself, but I am Carl, who is speaking through it this time. And one of the things that I used to teach when I was in the earth plane was that it is possible for you to talk to your soul. Your soul is a ball of energy about the size of a golf ball that is right in the center of your chest, under your breastbone. And your soul controls your entire being. And it is possible, by talking to your soul, that you can ask it to do and manifest things into your life. And one of the things you can do perhaps on a daily basis, or at least on a regular basis, is to talk to your soul and tell them that you have a very strong desire to become a trance medium, and that you want your soul to work on the fears that you have and the nervousness that you have about releasing yourself to spirit, and asking them to dissipate those fears. And the thing to remember is that when you ask something to be removed, you need to replace it with something else. So you could say that you could want to replace it with the love of spirit, the love of mankind, whatever you wish to do. So there is a way to do that, and I will have you ask this medium when he is more in his natural state to supply you with some templates of how that can be achieved. But it is something that I've talked to my people about as far as using that technique to bring whatever you want into your life, and you can use it for developing trance, because as you mentioned, as so many people mentioned, there is this fear of letting go, this fear of allowing someone through, this fear of what's going to be said through me, and to allow that all to gradually turn it down. It would be like using a rheostat. You would eventually start turning that rheostat, and that fear would start to go down each time you practice, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, until the resistance is totally gone, and you become much more of a clear channel to spirit than when you first started. So this is one technique that can be used to help in this situation, especially in developing the gift of trance.
That's very interesting. Thank you. I haven't heard about the talking to the soul thing and the removing of one and then adding something else. That's very interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
it's like sending an intention before each session.
Yes, that's very true. And this particular medium sets an intention right before he goes through. He talks to his soul, and he tells it what kind of gift it's going to be demonstrated at the time, and asks it to participate and to allow it to happen. Again, it's a technique of setting the intent, as you have stated, which is very important each time that you work, because you must understand from the spirit point of view that all spirit communication is very much an experiment. It's not like it's hard science where everything is written down and there's certain rules and this will happen and that will happen. What it actually is that there is a lot of variables, so that a lot of times we hope something will happen. But when we come to you and you are sitting in a meditative type state, we do not really understand necessarily why you're doing that. So in other words, if you're sitting to develop clairvoyance or you're sitting to develop trance, it all looks the same to us. And so by setting the intent, we know how to proceed to work with you. Does that make sense to you?
Sure. Yeah, right. And it's all communication, just like it is on this side.
Yes, very much so.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's very nice to meet you, Carl, and I'm reading the book that you and Sydney wrote.
Yes.
Together, and it's very, very interesting. I'm really enjoying it.
I'm very pleased to hear that. There were many things that happened in my life, very unusual things that happened in my life that are documented in that book. I had quite an unusual life's journey in this particular time. And the interesting thing is that things have not really changed all that much since I have come into the world of spirit, because I am still teaching and educating people about the gifts of the spirit, although I'm teaching them here on this side of the veil. And what's so very interesting is that in a lot of ways it's so much easier than when I was doing it in the physical world. Because in the physical world, people who were interested in the gifts of the spirit were kind of walking against the current of religious thought, because so many religions look negatively at mediumship. But when people come to our dimension, they have left their loved ones, and they suffer just as much trauma and grief of leaving their loved ones and coming to the spirit world as the physical people do. And suddenly they become very interested in trying to communicate with their loved ones back on Earth. So I have been working on educating people on the communication skills and educating them about how the gifts of the spirit work, so they can contact their loved ones if they are open to it, and even if they're not, sometimes to plant a thought into the subconscious minds of their loved ones, and who do not realize that that particular thought is coming from their loved one in spirit and not from their own mind. But for the spirit loved ones, it makes no difference. They're still in the lives of the physical person. So there is a lot more eagerness and interest on this side about learning about the gifts of the spirit than there was when I lived in the physical world.
Well, that's great. I mean, it must be such a pleasure to help those people.
Yes, yes.
I would imagine.
It is, and as you know, the world of mediumship has so many wondrous things that can happen, and therefore it is always an interesting type of experience, whether you experience it on the physical side of life or even here on the spirit side, to watch all of this happen.
I'll bet.
Yes, it must be very, I don't know if uplifting is the word, but very satisfying, gratifying when you see people here or on the spirit side grow.
Yes. It's also, in my case, it's a bit humbling that the work that I started 40-some years ago is still being continued, and that people are still following, but are interested in participating and still learning. It's kind of like planting seeds and watching them actually grow. But over this long course of time, it's quite. It is overwhelming sometimes to know that what I started is still continuing all these years later. And even after even after I passed on to the world of spirit.
Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. I mean, it's really, I can almost feel like what that must feel like.
I often get choked up about it. It's more than I ever thought would happen.
Wow.
As you know,
Nice.
as you know from reading the book, I grew up in a very rural community and had a very difficult time because I was born with the gifts of the spirit, and no one understood that because of their religious beliefs. They thought I was a child of the devil, and so I had a very difficult time in my early years. So for me to have accomplished something so lasting when I started with such self-doubt, it is quite amazing to me sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I read about that. I can't even imagine what that must have been like, and I'm very sorry you had to go through that.
And it's a shame that still happens there. It's
Yes.
in some families, that's how it is, unfortunately.
Fortunately, it's not as severe as it was when I was a child. The grips of religion on people's minds has weakened considerably. It's still there in some communities, but it's not strangling. It's not a strangling hold for most as it was for me. It's much less. There's so much more information about mediumship out and available to people, that people who are gifted and are having difficult time with their families and stuff can have access to resources that I never had, and there's outlets for them to pursue. Where for me everything was hidden at that time, everything was underground, and it was a much harder thing for me to find.
Yes, Yes, for many of our generation. Yes, yeah, like that.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If I can ask you a question of your personal experience.
Certainly.
Your death process, how was that when crossing over to spirit? It must have been, well, I don't know what it must have been, but it must have been happy, sad.
Well, for me, it was very happy, because what had happened to me in the last days of my life was that I had suffered a stroke, so I was theoretically trapped in my body. I say theoretically because I wasn't. You must understand, because of my gifts, I had all my life left my body. My spirit left my body and would go out into the universe and have conversations with great masters and great other spirit people, while other spirit was using my body and talking to you in the state of what is happening now. But for me, I always was a deep or dead trance medium, as they call it, because it simulated death. My soul left my body. Another soul came in and used it. So I was used to escaping, if you want to use that term. So when I no longer could use my physical body, I escaped. But I did not leave the body until at the actual time of death. There was about a period of 24 hours or so that I remained in the body until it was my time to actually go. They had put me on a respirator, which is keeping the body alive, but I fortunately didn't have to sit into the body and wait and be frustrated. I was out about and exploring already until it was time for them to shut the machines off, and then the silver cord that connects the soul to the body snapped like a overcooked piece of spaghetti, as I used to teach, and I was in the spirit world, being greeted by my family and loved ones in the world of spirit. For most people who do not know how to leave the body, they're trapped. Their mind and consciousness is trapped inside the body, and there's no place to go. There's nothing to do until that time of death happens. But I was not restricted that way. In fact, as I told this medium 2 hours after I died, before my actual time to cross over, I was already practicing how to communicate from the world of spirit to the physical world, because fortunately I was able to talk through another medium to this particular medium 2 hours after I crossed over. And so I already understood the reverse process of what I was doing all my life, and I was able to tell them that that I had crossed over and had a conversation with this medium. But again, my experience was not the typical one. For most people, they become quite trapped in their body when they suffer a stroke, or they go into there's a state of Alzheimer's, and because there is a certain part of the brain that in consciousness that it does hear and see, but the body isn't connected the way it used to be, so therefore they cannot communicate back, they cannot talk, but they hear, but they can't speak. So it becomes a very frustrating type of experience, because they cannot communicate with their loved ones, and there's nothing they can do about it but wait until it is their time to cross over. And for some people, that can be years and years and years. So I was quite fortunate that I did not have to experience that on any level. And even the time that I was kind of stuck in the body, it wasn't very long.
Wow, that sounds like a wonderful experience.
Yes, it was. It was quite joyous.
Well, Yes. So already having spoken to masters and had conversations, and I guess it wasn't a surprise to you, who greeted you when you finally did leave the body?
Well, actually it was, because the first person to greet me was my mother. And my mother and I did not have the best relationship, because there was many aspects of my life that she did not approve of. So there was a constant state of tension between us when we both were on the physical world. As my father told me, when he arrived in the spirit world, he was the one who thought that I was possessed by the devil and had lots of difficult times with me. He was informed when he got to the spirit world about the great things his son was doing and how highly regarded the work that I was doing was considered in the heavenly side of life, and became quite proud of what he used to disdain. And my mother followed suit on that. So, but it was still surprising for me as I first crossed over that she was the first one and was so happy to see me and so proud of what I had accomplished in my life, because it was not that way when she was on this side of the veil, on the physical side.
So they hadn't come through mediums before to speak to you then?
My father had. And he had come through, and along with one of my brothers, trying to apologize for what they had said and done to me when I was a kid. But my mother hadn't, per se.
Okay. Well.
Did you forgive them right away when you were with them again? Or did it take a while?
He did.
Or did you forgive them?
I had forgiven them quite some time ago, even during my physical life, because I understood that they were just acting under the rules of their brainwashing by their religion, so they were doing what they thought was right. And because they were so brainwashed in their thinking, they could not even contemplate or think about another aspect, another perspective that would contradict anything that they were taught by the people in their churches. So it wasn't really their fault that they were indoctrinated that way. So I had forgiven them. Before, yes, because I suppose you could say it wasn't intentional. They didn't set out to hurt me. They were just acting the way they were taught was the right way to do, and therefore it wasn't. But they did not have that perspective until they got into the world of spirit.
That's an excellent explanation. I appreciate that for my own thought process.
Yes, well, it works that way because, unfortunately, most religions do not accept this work, even though it's the foundation of all religions. The Bible is you wouldn't have a Bible if you took the psychic phenomena out. All the people in the Bible were clairvoyant, clairaudient, prophesied. They did every one of the gifts of the Spirit. Jesus did every one of the gifts of the Spirit, but yet they think he's against this work. It makes no sense, if you understand what's going on. Or what had happened, but the problem is that psychic science was not allowed to be taught, and therefore people didn't understand the gifts. And if you don't understand how it works, you don't see it in that book that you call the Bible. But it's there, and it's there very clearly, and all the little details are frequently in there along with it that prove that it's the mediumship that's happening. But the people don't know the details, so it's invisible to them. It's an interesting concept, but you only see what you know, And if you don't know it, you can't see it. So,
You're absolutely right.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as you know that. Interesting.
Is there anything else? Is there anything else?
It's given me a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Good thing.
Well, that's what the part of the purpose of this trance state is about, and this is what the highest purpose is for people, spirit people, and spirits that are a lot more advanced than me to come through and to hold philosophical educational sessions where people can learn spiritual truths directly from spirit. This is really what the trance state is meant to do, and meant to provide for people. But of course, religions have stripped that birthright from most people because they banned the mediums, they killed the mediums, and they silenced them for centuries and centuries.
Well, that's the only way organized religion can control the people.
That's true.
That's all what it's for, is control.
And I am sure that
into them.
I am sure that you are most aware, being that you are both female, is that the reason that the church didn't want females to become priests is because females are so much more psychically sensitive than men, and they were afraid, and they understood this when they wrote all their rules, that if they had a female standing in front of the congregation in the pulpits addressing the people, she could easily slip into a trance state and allow spirit to speak, and therefore spirit would contradict all the man-made crap that they created and all their rules, and everything would go down the drain. So this is why they forbid women to talk in a church, and this is why they forbid women to be a priest to this very day. And it's all because they're afraid of the psychic abilities of women.
Wow.
Well, they're quite misogynist, definitely.
Wow.
King James, it's just...
that opens up a whole new thought process for me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And you must understand that the Bible is not a book that was transmitted from God, like dictation, word for word. It has been edited. It has been edited greatly by the church, and they put in all kinds of rules that they wanted enforced, and said that God said it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The control of it.
Yeah. I do want to say that the one thing that I really take from your book is how limitless we truly are. You think you're so limited just inside our own body, but that's amazing how much more we could be.
Yes. And what is even more amazing is if you use the affirmations and talk to your soul, so you can achieve so much more than most people could even imagine.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'll have to try that.
Definitely.
Talk to the medium here, and he will give you more information on that.
Okay. Will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. It was a great pleasure for me to be able to speak with you and talk with you. And I look forward to meeting with you again. My blessings.
So do we.
My blessings to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Same for you.
Same.